Let's give a few seconds to start. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our audience from across the world. We are so happy to have you join us for the first session of the Generative AI Spotlight Series. My name is Izgi. I am the president of Informs Analytics Society, and today I'm joined by two incredible people. My colleague Segev Wasserkrug, Informs Practice Section board member, and he is also an ex-colleague from IBM, a senior technical staff member of IBM Research Haifa. And with Segev, we are hosting Léonard Boussioux, assistant professor in the Department of Information Systems and Operations Management at the University of Washington. So before we go to Leo's presentation, it might be worth to spend a couple of minutes to really talk about the Generative AI Spotlight Series and how did we come to this point. As I mentioned, both Segev and I have been serving in Informs organization over the years. And for those who are not familiar with Informs, it's the Institute for Operations Research and Management Sciences, a leading international association for professionals in analytics and operations research fields, aka optimization fields. At the core, we have OR and MS, but as we think about the application areas, OR and MS both work hands in hand with machine learning and all other subfields under cognitive computing and artificial intelligence. And in the last few years of Informs, we have been expanding our scope to incorporate AI to our organizational agenda. With that in mind, we wanted to take a step towards bringing together a relatively new capability, generative AI, with the existing fields like management science and decision science and data science. So Segev and I have been brainstorming about this webinar series since spring this year. And finally, we set the objective, we set the structure and the format, and found a very good time in between conferences for the kickoff. So as you all know, GenAI and large language models have been in our lives for about one and a half, 2 years now. And we have been reading papers, experimenting with models. We're building applications, architectures. We're comparing and contrasting, and we're combining GenAI with other disciplines and methodologies to get really the most out of this rapidly evolving capability. And when it comes to data science, decision science, and management science, there is now a new opportunity space with almost unlimited number of use cases where OR, ML, AI intersect, converge, or coexist with generative AI. Now, during the course of this webinar series, we will host experts from both industry and academia to walk us through what they have been working on, what type of questions they are asking in their projects or research, what they are learning from their experiments, how they are scaling their outputs, and of course, what are their viewpoints on the future trajectory of generative AI. Now I'll pause here and I will hand it over to Segev to share his thoughts and spend some time on the key areas of interest that we are planning to cover. Afterwards, we'll move to Leo's presentation and save some time for all of you to ask him questions about his work. Segev?
Thanks very much, Ceren. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Leo, for agreeing to be our first speaker. So just to give a little background, just additional background about myself. So as Ece said, I'm in IBM Research. I've been working for over 24 years in applying AI analytics capabilities to IBM and its clients to help make better decisions. And in recent years, I've been very active in understanding how generative AI together with can be brought together with operations research, management science, and other forms of analytics to drive better decision making. And actually, I'm very excited about this opportunity, which is why when Eche approached me about setting up this webinar series, I was very excited because I think it's extremely important for informs and ORMS and other analytics professionals to be proficient and be aware of this potentially transformative technology. And so that we want to make sure that the webinar series is comprehensive. And so we're going to cover quite a lot of, so we've already outlined the set of topics we want to cover. We'd love to hear from you, and there's a survey at the end, a link to the survey also in the webinar webpage, but also in the presentation for you to fill out and tell us first which of these you think are more important, more of interest to you, and if there are additional cases or scenarios or aspects you want to cover. So this will range from, this already is intended to range across a broad spectrum of topics, starting even from the background capabilities and the capabilities of generative AI technologies, the correct and effective usage of GenAI analytics practice. How can you use it to provide better solutions, better analytics solutions? How it should and could impact analytics RMS education, real-world applications. Want to discuss both case studies and both best practices and architectures for operationalizing and applying GenAI. A very important topic informs, in general, ethics in the practice of analytics is extremely important. Generative AI raises some new issues and obstacles that have to be correctly addressed, and poses some new risks that have to be mitigated. So this is also a topic that we want to cover in our webinar series. It also presents some exciting new research directions. There's already a lot of exciting new research at the intersection of generative AI, such as the ability to describe a problem in natural language and generate an accurate and computationally efficient optimization model from it. And of course, we also want to discuss the future, even though things are rapidly changing so rapidly that future could be as little as 2 weeks or several months from now. But we still want to try and the brave and courageous among us may want to try and venture a guess about what the future will hold. So the other topics, again, we'd like you to tell us which of these would be more interesting, more relevant, more important, any additional topics, and at the end there'll be a survey. And now I'll turn it over to Leo. Make sure there's to post as the presentation goes on. There will be no Q&A in the middle, but be sure to post your questions in the Q&A in the Zoom, and at the end we leave time to cover and answer the questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Leo.
Thank you so much, Segev. I'm so delighted to be here with all of you. Thank you all for coming. I'm very excited to kick off the session and talk more about how we can leverage generative AI for creative problem solving in operations research and management science. So because it's the first session, I will also focus sort of on the first aspect of where GenAI can help, which is in the ideation and an evaluation refinement of your work. And I always start when I teach with a big motivation for my students, and I see some of them in the audience. I really want to encourage everyone to aim for big goals. And one of mine is being able potentially to help solve the United Nations goals much faster than we are going to do it with current technologies. So how can we get there? So the goals, there are 17 of them. We are going to fall short of them. It's very challenging to address climate equity, education, health for all, clean energy. So I really believe that using the latest technologies and our field is also responsible to make that happen. So if we take sustainable cities and communities, if we ask AI to suddenly think about it, we can have quickly some visualization of how AI can envision a futuristic city. So here, I'm just using AI as a representation of a possible world in the future, but it's something that we see starts to emerge, which is AI can be a co-pilot, a method for you to visualize faster what you envision. It can accelerate the innovation process. And then the models keep evolving constantly. So here are two views from Midjourney of how a sustainable city can look like. Of course, it's very futuristic. We are far away from having such cities, but those are the kind of things we can represent with AI. And I love using the visual aspect to showcase what I hope for the future, which is a technology that help us solve big goals. Also, big shout out to all the recent Nobel Prizes. It's a big year for AI, and it shows that AI is already recognized as a technology that can help innovate even in fields such as physics or chemistry. So overall, as a young faculty at the University of Washington, I recently graduated from MIT in OR. This is the mission I set up for myself. I want to develop AI in the loop pipelines to accelerate the entire problem-solving cycle, including from the very beginning when you just start with ideas until the practical realization. And I think our field combined with AI is at a really good spot to do that. So I focus on how we can create better ideas, how we can evaluate the quality of these ideas at scale, how can we model, code, and prototype, meaning how we have the right copilots for us, how we can also design the proper human-AI collaboration, and of course, making sure that we have robust and multimodal AI tools that will take into account all possible aspects. So today, I will focus on those two parts of my work, ideation and evaluation, and how to design the proper human-AI collaboration in the aspect. So here's the agenda. I will present a lot of field experiments around some sustainable goals topics. So the first field study will be centered around how we can collaborate with AI to generate business ideas at scale and around the theme of circular economy. The second field study will be around how we can leverage AI to help us evaluate the quality of early stage innovations. And our case study will be on global health equity. And finally, I'll finish with some personal tips to enhance your academic workflow with GenAI tools, because I love exploring how all those tools that are becoming available can also accelerate our daily work. So let's get started. I want first to give a shout out to all my collaborators on the work I'm going to present today. So in particular, Jackie, Charles, Miao Miao, Karim, amazing students of mine at the University of Washington, Amy, Yan, and Camila, and our partners from the industry, because all the work I'm going to present is actually applied in multiple institutions. So Rebecca, Pooja, and Vladimir. So it's a cross collaboration between the University of Washington, MIT, and Harvard. So the big question that will get us busy today is how can we augment the early stage of the innovation process using generative AI? And let's say you have a challenge, a problem to solve. This is why maybe you're called. The first process that can happen is that you want to generate potential solutions to this challenge. And maybe you can ask multiple humans to find a solution to your problem. But maybe you can also collaborate with AI. And then more and more people are going to use AI in the process to create a solution. But then you reach out a stage where you have so many solutions. Potentially, I can even ask ChatGPT to give me 100 different solutions to this problem. But then which one should I choose? This is why there is also a need to potentially screen and evaluate at scale. So today, the first study will be about how we can ideate using a human-AI collaboration. And then I will study how we can use generative AI and a human-AI collaboration to help us evaluate the quality of ideas. So let's focus first on the first study. So here is the setting of this study. we took a real-world crowdsourcing challenge around circular economy. So that was a challenge put out by an AI platform, and they wanted to collect from a human crowd solutions that would bring a new business model around circular economy, meaning something around refurbishing, recycling, how to handle food waste. And it's very hard to create value and novelty in this domain. What we did is the following. We collected answers from the human crowd. So that's the traditional principle of crowdsourcing. You give a challenge, you incentivize people to participate, and you collect answers from people all over the world or for a specific community. And we decided to actually give the exact same challenge to GPT-4. So we asked the AI model to give us solutions using the exact same text and prompt and description that we gave to humans. We also included variations. So we prompted with different techniques. For instance, we added some personalities, asking the AI to take the personality of Elon Musk to answer, the personality of Satya Nadella, so famous innovators, CEOs, and also personalities of actual humans who participated to the challenge. And he wanted to compare and see how the two crowds were doing, knowing that the human AI collaboration is just me prompting the AI. So it's one person prompting an AI model that was trained on a huge amount of data. And the question is, can I match the whole creativity of an entire crowd? And I don't know if this crowd may use AI or not, but can I match just by myself the whole crowd? And the first answer was that the creativity of just me prompting ChatGPT was similar to the creativity of the human crowd when we looked at the distribution of all the data, of all the ideas we generated, and we generated hundreds of them. However, what was interesting is that there is nuance in that. The human AI collaboration managed to bring more valuable solutions. So value is how much economic, financial, sustainable impact your idea is going to have according to a set of judges that we hired. But what was also very interesting is that the novel solutions were mostly from the human crowd. In particular, what we care about are those extreme, highly novel solutions. Those are the rare ones. And it turns out that it's only the crowd that managed to get the highest novelty. So me just prompting the AI, I did not manage to reach that level. And so we are going to dive more into this. So let's start first with the motivation of innovation. The best ideas are statistically rare. So there is a lot of literature showing that this is hard to capture this extreme value. And then one technique is to increase the number of parallel paths, meaning multiple ways of achieving the solution. And crowdsourcing is a famous technique to achieve that. Because crowdsourcing allows you to access knowledge perspectives from multiple people outside potentially of your company. And so because we have access to more diverse knowledge and perspectives, it also brings more likelihood of getting those extreme outcomes, because one person out of your whole crowd might be the right one to answer this, or might have a crazy idea because they will think differently. And in fact, it's been shown also that it can be a quite cost-effective manner to acquire some good ideas. So a famous example is Netflix. They had a competition about a decade ago where they asked the whole crowd to participate to build an algorithm to help them determine which movies people should watch. And then there exist many other platforms around that. There is the Kaggle platform, and constantly there are crowdsourcing challenges. And now the idea is, can I use generative AI to potentially replace this crowd? Could I simulate a whole crowd with my generative AI model, meaning able to generate high quality solutions without needing to access the whole crowd? And organizing a crowdsourcing challenge also requires a lot of incentivize. You need to incentivize people. You need to create a platform. You need to give the right context, which is not always easy. So now we are going to investigate if this human large language model collaboration can match the creativity of the human crowdsourcing. So what we did is actually having multiple approaches of prompting with ChatGPT. The first technique is I'm going to open multiple chats of ChatGPT and ask the same question, which is, the challenge. And then I can introduce variations into each chat. So the main challenge is always the same, but I can change your personality, because it's been shown also that ChatGPT is able to take the perspective of someone, which may trigger other behaviors. We also set a temperature to the default value, which means that the model is having a probabilistic generation of the tokens. And then if you execute even the exact same prompt multiple times, you will get different outcomes. So we basically ask 100 chats to give us 100 different answers. That's in what we call independent search. But the other technique that we investigated is to open only one chat and ask ChatGPT to generate ideas one by one. And between every single idea, we ask to differentiate the solution, meaning we ask the model to give us something that is even better and different than all the previous solutions generated. And then it turns out that by doing this single instance, asking ChatGPT to improve itself, this brought more novelty than just having different chats respect to each other. Because those chats had a low diversity of answers. They were all pretty good, but never in the extreme outcomes. So by asking one single model to sort of brainstorm over and over, you push the model into more interesting parts of its sort of brain, into its latent space, because every new answer is conditioned on the previous one. So this is something we investigated and contributed, which is showing the impact of doing a search with the AI in an independent manner or having a differentiated search. So that's something to be aware for you. Feel free to ask AI to improve on its answer, to iterate, because it has sort of an ability to reflect on what was previously presented and look into ways to make it better. So if we now plot all the ideas that we got from the human crowd and the human AI collaboration, we asked judges, but by paying them from different platforms, we wanted them to evaluate every idea according to different criteria, including the value and the novelty. And so it turns out that if we look at the most novel idea that is right here, it was from the human crowd. And this idea was to create innovative bricks made of foundry dust and waste plastic that would have a Lego structure, and you could interlock them to design some interesting constructions very fast. For instance, you have a natural disaster, you quickly build a shelter with this. Or if you don't have, you're in a low and middle income country and you don't even have access to a house, you can build shelter just by recycling this. So this was judged as the most novel idea of them all. And if now we look at who generated the most valuable ideas, typically it was the human AI collaboration. So one such idea is, we are going to convert your food waste from restaurants and households into biogas for electricity through bioenergy centers. So this idea is, of course, going to bring value, but it's not as novel like something maybe you have heard of. It's not surprising because the AI is trained on a massive amount of data. So it thinks about what it has read, and it's good at recombining, but not necessarily completely innovating. So the question that we ask ourselves in this research is also, if we have this AI in the loop, because we don't want only the AI to do things alone. Like I had to prompt the AI, meaning I had to put some of my humanness into the collaboration. And to generate top novel ideas, we envision two pathways. One is to have better AI systems, because AI capabilities keep improving. So for instance, if you have tried the model ChatGPT 01, this model is actually able to solve problems in math and coding that other models were not able to do before. Think about multi-agent large language models where you have multiple models talking with each other, multimodal models that will be able to learn from videos, for instance, retrieval augmented generation, meaning you can enhance the capabilities of one model by searching for information online. So those systems can probably improve the novelty. There is a recent paper about large language models can generate novel ideas in natural language processing that had a lot of success, and then they actually implemented some of those things. And then the answer was that yes, large language models can innovate in very technical fields, but you do have to use some techniques to enhance that. The other way to improve the performance is to have a better human-AI interaction. As you could see, I designed a lot of prompts, but I did not went crazy in the co-ideation process. I could have iterated and took the most novel AI idea and then improve it on top, adding maybe some novelty. Or we could ask the AI to take the most novel ideas and actually help them to be more valuable. So this process of having AI as a sounding board to give you several rounds of iteration is also a pathway. There is also emerging literature on that. And really, this is maybe how we can get moonshot ideas by collaborating with the AI. And so it's a really evolving process. The technology keeps pushing its jagged frontier. So now that we saw that we can effectively create ideas at scale, that's something that can be helpful for you in many challenges. So some work that I'm doing with Segev, for instance, is about how to use generative AI to help us find good solutions to optimization problems. So really, this process is very exciting for us. Think, for instance, of your students who have to find ideas for projects, or your employees, teammates, managers, they have to innovate and find different product ideas. So really, generative AI can help in the process. As you could see, we generated hundreds of ideas, and we had to pay people from the prolific platform to actually evaluate those ideas. Or maybe you have people in your team who can evaluate the quality, but it takes a lot of time. It's really cognitively demanding. So this is why the next natural follow-up study was to evaluate if AI can actually screen ideas as well at scale. So to investigate this question, we collaborated with MIT Solve, which is an amazing marketplace of ideas. It's hosted at MIT, and they've been giving about $70 million in funding across the past 10 years to multiple teams in so many different challenges, always around sustainability, equal development, etc. Thanks to all those projects that were funded, millions of lives could be impacted positively, and they really help lots of projects to be catalyzed with this money. But the way they do this is by having dozens of challenges and thousands of solutions to evaluate. Their projects are always super popular because those are calls to action and crowdsourcing challenges for all over the world, in particular low and middle income countries. And they receive so many ideas constantly, which means they also have dozens of people involved to screen all of that. And it's extremely time consuming. And typically they receive ideas that are enormous sometimes to read. So screening is overwhelming. That's why we immediately see an opportunity for generative AI and a human AI collaboration to help assess the quality of ideas. So if you, again, we go back to our curve, this is an idealistic curve of distribution of ideas and quality. It sort of follows a Gaussian curve with, of course, a longer tail. And then we want to figure out which are the bad apples. We want to eliminate these from the pool. But we also want to be able to assess the quality and potentially figuring out which should be the very best teams, which teams should move forward, how to properly give feedback to projects. And it turns out that by talking with our MIT Solve partners, they told us that because of ChatGPT, the number of solutions they received increased by a factor of 2 between 2023 and 2024. It really lowered the barrier to entry because they asked about 40 questions, including the business model, the team, how do they prototype, what's the core of the technology, how do they plan on moving forward, how do they plan on getting more customers with their product. It's basically a very demanding process. And before, it deterred a lot of people from participating. But now it's so easy with ChatGPT to actually help you getting a super high quality English and also just answer everything. But they also remarked that because of that, the quality of the ideas they received decreased a little bit. And in a way, it's not that surprising because if you're familiar with using ChatGPT to create projects or just drafts, it's kind of very, like sometimes only staying at the surface level. It's not going to the depth. It feels like very well written, but generic. And this is what they figured out, that those people sometimes just want to participate to get funding, but they haven't put a lot of effort into really presenting their work. But the problem is it's so well written now that it's also hard to evaluate properly when you have, for instance, 10 pages of text for one idea. So clearly there is interest in building a system to help that. So this is the methodology we designed. We partner with MIT Solved, use their actual data to develop a large language model screener. We layered field experiments into the screening process, and we pre-registered the study multiple times to be able to assess how people actually use the large language model. Because our goal is not to replace humans, but to augment the process. So we deployed the large language model recommendations on web apps. And finally, we collected a lot of amazing data to identify the optimal form of human AI collaboration. So we call this the narrative AI advantage because we investigated multiple forms of AI. So we have two AI recommendation types that we have. We, of course, have a control condition where people have absolutely no AI to evaluate, and two treatments where one is black box AI, which is the recommendation from the AI to pass or fail a solution. So the model we used was GPT-4 with a sophisticated prompt. But we also developed what we call narrative AI, where we asked GPT-4 to also generate an explanation for why it passes or fails the solution. So the model has to do a chain of thought, meaning it's going to have a whole argument. Then we ask for a summary of why it thinks it's passing or failing. We are totally aware that this is a probabilistic explanation and that it does not really reflect how the model made its decision. So it's sort of a post hoc explanation of why the model thinks this. But it can still be really beneficial. It's a form of explainability somehow, and we wanted to know how humans are going to react to this, knowing that they actually have full knowledge of the fact it's AI generated. We also investigate, so that's the first research question we have is how the fact that we provide a narrative, meaning an explanation, will actually influence your decision making. Because more and more AI is present in our decision making processes. The other dimension we investigated is the fact that when you evaluate the quality of an idea, you have something that are objective or subjective to evaluate. And we wanted to know how having AI to help you evaluate something objective or subjective will change your decision-making again. And finally, because we did 4 field studies, we actually were able to determine if those effects from the AI recommendations changed depending on how much of a domain expert you were. The quick answers are the following. As we expected, having a narrative will influence human decisions more than if you have just a black box. What's also interesting is that the influence is mostly present when you have some subjective criteria to evaluate, meaning that when you have a narrative that helps you evaluating something according to something subjective, this is where you will have more impact from the AI. And then there was no difference observed between experts and non-experts, which was also interesting, meaning that we were all influenced the same way. And I'm going to mention also that we observed instead a new kind of expertise, which is AI interaction expertise. And so it also prompts us to think that it's not only about being a domain expert now, it's also being an AI expert. And the combination of being domain expert and AI expert might be very interesting. So how did we proceed? We looked into the actual decision-making from MIT Solve. They have a whole rubric with official criteria that each idea has to pass. We created a ChatGPT prompt to evaluate really carefully according to these criteria and to obtain the decision from ChatGPT and the rationale. So we asked ChatGPT to give us a decision in terms of percentage of passing. Once again, we are fully aware that this is imperfect, but the point is not about building the perfect recommender, but investigating about the perfect human AI collaboration. So how we can calibrate all of that. Here are 2 examples of criteria. One that is the objective criterion is your solution, at least in the prototype stage? So they only want to fund projects that are at least at the prototype stage. So that's something you can be, it's a yes or no. And something more subjective is, do you think this solution is good quality enough that we should send it to an external reviewer that is not part of MIT Solve to take the time to read it and score it? So it's very subjective. You don't have any proper benchmark. And this is why it can be challenging to evaluate an idea when you have such criteria. So here, I won't spend too much time on the prompt, but basically we had to work hard to find a good prompt. And it was a lot of back and forth with previous years to calibrate the model. So we have a system message that gives the context. We instruct the model to think step by step, and then by giving some extra details, we feed the actual context of the challenge. So here, the data I will present is around global health equity. So there is a whole challenge around global health equity. We include the criteria that AI has to evaluate. We do few-shot prompting by including some ideas that passed the criteria in the past and some that are failing the criteria. Like this, the AI has a way to calibrate because it's also otherwise very hard. Then we give the solution to evaluate. This solution can range from anywhere between 3 pages to maybe 15 pages of text. So it's huge. And finally, we give a specific format for the output, where we want the whole reasoning, a summary rationale, and then the passing probability. We collected all the ideas that were submitted from the humans. So it's 500 ideas submitted in early 2024. So of course, many of them had ChatGPT involved. In fact, most of them. We randomly sampled 48 of them. And then we had 4 sessions with field experiments. So we had actual judges from MIT Solve, actual community screeners, so people they call for help when they are overwhelmed for screening. My 120 undergraduate students at the University of Washington. So I'm very happy that they participated. So I gave them a homework assignment where they had to learn from the process as well, so we could collect data. And also the Aspires Leader Program, which is a cohort of students worldwide who dream to go to Harvard. And so they regularly have trainings to help them access to the undergraduate program. Thanks to this, we collected 228 human screeners, which gave us 3,000 screener solution pairs, so tons of cool data. Some of the sessions were conducted on Zoom, some were conducted in person, some were conducted asynchronously. This is how the platform looks like. We have the solution application with all the texts and all the different questions that people have to answer. You have the screening criteria on the left, and then this is where you have to include your decision to pass or fail. And if you decide to fail, you have to give the exact reason why you think it's failing. If you have the AI recommendation, this is how it looks like. You have the large language model recommendation, and then you have the pass or fail for each criterion. If you have the narrative, you can remark that on top of having the pass or fail, you also have some LLM generated rationale that may also guide your thinking process. So here are also something to notice is that every person has to evaluate between 10 and 30 solutions, typically within an hour. And they go through 2 sequences. So we have the control treatment where there is nothing, and then treatment 1 and treatment 2. We randomized all of these. So maybe they will get control and treatment 2. Maybe they will get treatment 2 and treatment 1. So we have 6 sequences possible. And here are a few results. We noticed that the AI was the harshest. That's because we calibrated the AI to be harsh according to previous challenges that they had in the previous years. And we also noticed that the more you start using the AI, the more you become harsh as well. So it showed that AI did influence you. So people started to align more with AI versus the control condition where the AIs were looking that good that most people decided to accept them. So AI-assisted screeners were more likely to fail a solution. So now we wanted also to evaluate for subjective criteria if having AI explanation will make it more persuasive. And then the answer is yes. So if we looked into if AI is telling you to pass, there is no fundamental difference whether you have a narrative or not. If AI, and if now the AI is thinking you should fail the solution, again, there is no big difference between black box and narrative AI. But what was interesting is that now that it's subjective, if you have an explanation that gives you a take on this idea, people are more likely to adhere to the AI recommendation. So it's very interesting to know that AI will influence you, in particular when you have harder time judging what would be a ground truth. Something objective, you can disagree. You can decide to override the AI because you think, no, by reading this, I figure out that I don't agree with the AI decision. But when it's subjective and you feel unsure about you may defer to the AI model about that. And then what was interesting is that we may think that experts may feel more prone to override the AI because they have better knowledge of ideas. They've been doing this for years and they really know what's passing or failing. But in fact, people were equally influenced in the process. And what was fascinating to see is that, for instance, my UW students were equally good at evaluating ideas as the experts. If we use a benchmark of external judges that we also asked to evaluate every idea, we had an external 30 people giving a grade to all the ideas to evaluate that. So I will present results soon. So AI subjective explanations are highly convincing at any expertise level. So it's something really good to know and be aware of, that we can always be influenced. We also did some very exciting data collection. We measured all the clicks and all the mouse movements from people in the platform using post-hoc. And then from all the data analysis, it suggests that people started to develop a form of expertise which consists in interpreting and integrating AI insights in a strategic manner. And people started to develop strategies on how to best spend their time in evaluating each idea. They only had 2.5 minutes per idea. That's a constraint that is the real world constraint of judges because they have that many. And it turns out that the people who spent more time evaluating the idea were also more likely to scrutinize the AI recommendations critically. And it makes sense because people who are reading more, the idea try to go back and forth with what the AI is suggesting and then finding the answer, will feel more comfortable overriding or accepting something. While some people just decided a strategy that if I don't really know, I will just follow the AI advice. So we observed AI trust, AI distrust, and then some strategic human AI collaboration. So all those results are in the paper. I'm just going over some key insights. Another thing that we investigated was exciting is the fact that we asked external judges to evaluate the quality of each idea among the 48 samples according to feasibility, impact, innovativeness, alignment with the challenge. And it turns out that the people who were the most aligned with these external judges were actually the screeners who used the black box AI recommendations. There is no ground truth, of course. It's challenging to say that this idea is better or not. But considering this external quality measurement, having the narrative did not necessarily lead to better outcomes regarding solution quality. And again, domain expertise did not have a significant impact in selecting higher quality solutions. And so there is also emerging literature showing that having a human AI collaboration won't necessarily make you better than the AI alone or the human alone. There is a lot of work going on right now to figure out how do you get a human AI collaboration to outperform the two, meaning creating a strong synergy. And then it's really not a given. So a conclusion around that is that we really observed that AI was able to scale expertise across knowledge boundaries, and that we were highly influenced by the narratives. So that's something to take into account whenever you design AI systems in your pipelines. We also investigated that there is a division of labor that starts to appear, that you may be able to leverage AI to automate and standardize for objective criteria. AI is actually pretty good at this because it has learned the different criteria from the huge amount of training data. And then maybe you can augment the process for subjective evaluation. You can have the AI bringing your attention of a few points or giving you feedback and helping you building a sounding board. But what was super exciting is the fact that we do need this AI interaction expertise, and then to develop this critical engagement with the AI recommendations. So now I want to conclude with a few final points that I love teaching generative AI, and I created a lot of cool teaching materials. I open sourced everything, and you can find all of it in this website. And then I witnessed how students could achieve things that were deemed unfeasible before. I had, for instance, my master's students all being able to deploy APIs, building live demos in a mere 3 weeks. All my undergrads were able to do some advanced machine learning workflows with more technology, more packages than before. So really, it's cool. It can also permeate through the classroom. Another thing I love is you can build, for instance, websites super fast. And I think it's a really good way to teach to your teammates, to your students, to your colleagues, to your friends, how generative AI can help you in so many different ways. So on my website, I also put a tutorial on how you can use 6-7 different generative AI tools to build a web app live super fast, including how to generate images, the code, how to include sound, and then how to use Claude or ChatGPT, etc. Something super cool if you've never tried is the Claude artifacts. I highly encourage you to look into Claude. It's equally good as ChatGPT in so many tasks, and I think it's even better whenever it involves writing. It's really good at writing, but also it can execute code directly on the right. Not every type of code, but for instance, you can build a live game like a tic-tac-toe, a snake game, or many other things like a Pong game. You can really play with these, demonstrate the abilities of the models, and have your students play with it. You can also use it to generate diagrams and figures for you. So the prompt engineering flow that I showed in one slide, I actually used Claude to just give the whole graph. So I would redo it in a clean manner with more time. But yesterday I thought, okay, to make it more understandable, let's just copy paste my entire prompt to Claude and ask the model to create a SVG workflow to show to people how it works. I encourage you also to use some frontier tools, like for instance, Replit Agents is a super cool example of how agents can help you build a whole website from scratch. With such a simple prompt as create a dashboard simulator for personal finances, whether I should pay taxes now or later, you directly have the model telling you, hey, what do you want in this app? Do you want this, this, this? And it gives you the whole code, including the visualization, the backend, etc. So it's a super exciting workflow. Look into ChatGPT, the custom GPTs. And an example that can be cognitively demanding is you want to figure out the best location to cite this paper in your massive draft. Like sometimes you want to include this reference, but it can be cognitively demanding to figuring the exact best way of doing it. So you can build an assistant tool that can read your whole paper, that can read the whole paper you also need to cite and give you suggestions where it could be appropriate. So it's also a human AI collaboration in the writing process. Perplexity can help you make advanced technical search. So let's say you are looking for one specific citation, like you want to push this point further. You can, of course, use Google Scholar, Google to help you, but also these models that do retrieval augmented generation sometimes might give you the answer even faster. The goal is not, of course, to make your literature review shorter. It's also a way to help you find information that you may have difficulties finding otherwise. But warning, even a tool like Perplexity.ai can still hallucinate references. And finally, I found that O1 has new abilities that no other model had before, in particular in copy editing. If you ask the AI to read your entire paper to find any issue before you submit, for instance, to management science, operations research, the model will find things that no other model would find before. I was blown away. I recently submitted the second study to management science, and then it was amazing the little details that the model could find. And then if you cite papers, you have a whole reference sections. You want to make sure that every paper in the main manuscript is in the references and vice versa. O1 is so good at figuring it out, much better than any other model before. So if you've tried that and you've been satisfied before, try O1. And finally, you can even check if your paper is properly anonymized by asking O1 to check that everything is anonymized and even guess who are those anonymized little things. All right, so if you are excited to learn more about that, of course, keep going to this webinar series. But Segev and I and the colleague Wei are also giving a tutorial on large language models for smarter decisions in ORMS at the upcoming Informs conference. And then I want to conclude by engaging all of us to think about how we can build the future of human AI collaboration and really engage more and more people to want to dream big and achieve big things. Thanks all.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I echoing? I can hear my voice.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, sounds good. So I think this was amazing. Thank you for walking us through your great work and sharing your findings. A very comprehensive and new approach to design of experiments while designing systems, right? It's also, I think, a perfect testament to how the top of the value chain, like upstream innovation, decision-making frameworks, like methodologies such as design thinking and systems thinking that we actively use in data-driven strategy and solutioning. They can all be reimagined through generative AI, as you just walked through, and they can be tailored to both business and societal systems, organizations of all sizes, all types, for communities for all types and sizes. So incredible work, Leo. Thank you very much. Now, as planned, we are moving into question and answers for you to ask your questions to Leo. Segev and I will read the questions. I can already see one in the chat box. Let's maybe start with that one.
Yes, so could you please talk more about how the value and novelty of an idea is evaluated in your research? Have you also used AI to evaluate them? So in the first study I presented on circular economy, here we paid judges from the Prolific platform. So meaning that the people on Prolific can be anyone who logs in. We included a screening process to make sure that they had decent knowledge of circular economy by asking them a questionnaire, but they reflect sort of someone who has a bit of critical thinking, but general evaluators. So it's according to general evaluators. And then we gave them definitions of value, novelty, feasibility, etc. So they had a little prompt, but they did not have context on how an idea should be graded. So this is why we actually had hundreds of evaluators from Prolific. We hired 300 evaluators, and every idea was evaluating on average 16 times. In the second study, the AI is evaluating this according to the criteria that we mentioned. And so here we gave definitions of the criteria. So now we have a question from Mohammed about, I was wondering about the liability issues using AI-based decisions. That's a really good point. And then while doing the study, for instance, with MIT Solve, we are fully aware that those people, they've written sometimes 5 to 15 pages. They really care about their project. Many of them come from low and middle income country. Every project is actually serious sometimes. And then what happens if we ask an AI to evaluate? Is it fair to everyone? The answer is it's complex. And then the MIT Solve is putting a lot of disclaimers around that, of course, but we are really going to deploy the models. Also want to mention that right now, the way it works is that you have 2 reviewers per idea, and they only spend 2.5 minutes. So basically, we may even increase the fairness because AI will sort of spend equal amount of time on everything and will read everything. And then this is why there is a lot of responsibilities into the design of the process and into the design of the human AI collaboration. So the liability issue is ever evolving. Right now, it's not always clear, and then it depends on the use case. So for instance, in healthcare, definitely it can have big impact. So now a question about, isn't the quality of the AI recommendations based on how well you did the prompt engineering? That's absolutely correct. We spent hours figuring out the best prompt. And then this is why it's really even a human collaboration, a human AI collaboration, even at the stage of the design of the prompt. And then prompt engineering is a skill and also requires a lot of benchmarks. It's very hard to evaluate the quality of your prompt if you don't have sort of a data set to evaluate that. So the way we did this is that we had access to data from the previous years where we knew who was considered a finalist, who was screened out from the very beginning, who was a semi-finalist, who was a winner. So we used that as a calibration perspective. And then we investigated so many different prompts. You can ask the model to be very harsh or to just be neutral, or you can ask the model to only pass a very small percentage of the ideas, to prompt the model being harsher. Or in the few shot prompting, you can give really, really good ideas. Like you set the benchmark super high, or you can give average ideas. All those are decisions to make. And that also depends on your workflow. And that's also what things that we contribute in the work. Like we put a lot of effort into designing the right prompt. And about the ideation, same, absolutely. The way you design your prompt might enable more novelty. So this is really a human AI collaboration aspect still. How many examples of idea evaluation pairs did you provide to the LLM to evaluate a new idea? So the model had access to one example of something that passed everything and one example that failed one criterion. So we did one evaluation per criterion. And so we have 5 different criteria. So we passed every idea 5 times into a prompt that is tailored to every criteria. And we gave just 2 idea evaluation pairs. And so we had around 30 people, either from my students, from the MIT Solve community, etc., who evaluated them using the tool. Yes, I think that's all the questions I got from the chat. Any published studies of this work? Yes, the first one is published at Organization Science. So we got accepted about maybe 4 months ago, and the paper is already out online at Organization Science. And then the second study, you can have the preprint on SSRN online, and we submitted to Management Science or now.
I have just pasted Leo's papers in the chat. And as a side note, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on Inform's website and also Inform's YouTube channel. Any other questions?
So Leo, actually, I have a question. You showed, using or mentioned using O1 ChatGPT, O1 to review papers before you submit them to management science or other venues. Are there any sort of privacy or proprietariness issues people should be aware of when they use LLMs in such, third party or proprietary LLMs in such a way?
Absolutely. So personally, I don't share my data with OpenAI. That you can go into the settings and then disable sharing your data with them. So that's one thing I do. But second, my paper is online, is available on the internet. And I'm actually happy if my paper gets into the training data because it's sort of a soft advertising for my research. And this is actually an emerging way of doing advertisement. If your company has good PR within the LLM training data, it may, whenever someone is asking a general question, your company may pop up. So I'd be happy if someone asking a question like, what should I know about human AI collaboration to evaluate ideas? My paper shows up because it appeared in the training data. So in my case, I'm happy and I'm not seeing an issue. However, because anyway, my paper is online. However, for anything that is sensitive, for instance, around healthcare data, or your paper is not online yet, I would not do that with O1, for instance. But there exist methods like LM Studio, where you can use open source models, for instance, Llama or Mistral, directly on your computer, such that your data never leaves your computer. So I actually use those for everything that's sensitive because it never leaves my computer and does not need the internet to work.
Great questions. And thank you, Leo, for your insights to human AI collaboration. And as we have been thinking on the future of work, augmenting the decision-making processes, accelerating the innovation processes, especially in the for-profit environments, right? Time from idea to market is a very critical metric that we care about a lot, which is an indicator of whether, you know, the organization has built muscles to rapidly innovate. As we see the series of experiments that you have done, GenAI plays a force multiplier role in the breadth and depth of context in the incubation and design phases. So I think we are top of the hour, but I would like to get some closing thoughts from both Leo and Segev.
So on my end, I believe that we have tons of opportunities to use generative AI as tools to enhance our workflows, but then it requires more creativity than ever. I really believe that it's not a question of is AI growing exponentially, but a question of how us collaborating with the tools can have exponential impact. So I really use AI as a tool in very strategic manners. I always push for new use cases, and I encourage people around me to become AI champions, which means you become responsible in how you use it. You're creative, you pioneer new methods, and you teach around you to others. You get curious about who could benefit from it, whether you're in academia, in the industry, whether you're learning. And so my conclusion point is, let's learn more about how to collaborate with the tool, and let's be creative. Let's be artists in the way we use it.
And to add on top of that, so I think generative AI, I absolutely agree. It's a great tool with everything that's been said. I'm very enthusiastic about it. But I think we have to be aware and cognizant of the fact that it requires us to develop or hone new skills. So a very clear example is the need to develop prompting skills. How that was also raised by a question. But I think perhaps, in my view, perhaps the most critical skill that people have to make sure is sharp enough when using generative AI is critical thinking and evaluation, because it's very easy to be misled by the very convincing and well crafted answers of generative AI. We saw in the study that Leo showed that when people got generative AI with explanations, they actually did a worse job than people, or in some sense at least, than people who did not have the explanation. I think one of the most important skills is critical thinking, and really leave your thinking cap on when using generative AI. But I'm not that troubled by that, because I think that's a very critical skill in any case, even without generative AI. So that's the thought I'd like to close with.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, both. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Quick reminder for future sessions, enter your suggestions, suggested topics in the survey link below. The same link is also in the registration page that you have used. So thank you for joining, and see you all in the next session.
Yeah,
Thank you everyone for the questions. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn, by email, check my website. And I'm so happy to see so much interest, so many questions. Like, we can really build amazing things all together.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.